So energy has a consciousness and it has an awareness, and that energy is a field of information that we are an extension of, that we have access to, and that we have spent so much time of our life looking outside of ourselves instead of looking inside of ourselves, and that we are really conditioned to look just for particles and matter instead of energy and information. And truly, when people reach the end of their beliefs or they're facing crisis in their lives, that's the moment they start to turn within and start to ask the bigger questions. And if you are astute enough to look at this in moments of contemplation, if you are wanting to hide God anywhere, it would be a good place to hide. It would be within the human being, because everybody's looking outside of themselves. And we look for reasons to change and regulate our emotional states. We think that things and people and external things will really fulfill emotional states that we're trying to change from within us. And that truly, that when we start to investigate who we are and look to see how we do that and demystify it, I think once we start to demystify it, it becomes a skill. And so 17th century scientists were very interested in studying the nature of reality. They were passionate about it because they wanted to do extensive research on cadavers and understand the world of the very large and how planets rotated around the sun. And but what he had a quandary, because the church at the time didn't want him to change any of the current beliefs. So he made a very, very split decision, sitting by a fountain one day, and he said, okay, the best way that I can continue to do my research is I'm going to study the physical world of the very large objects of matter. And then everything that has to do with the mind, it's too convoluted and it's too unpredictable, we'll leave that to the church. So science was always matter, never mind. The church was always mind, never matter. The two were never to be combined. And this scientist actually separated the idea of the mind, body, and connection. He thought there was mind and there was body, and it was cut off at the neck. And he did that purposely because he wanted to get the cadavers from the dead, from the church, and be able to do his research. So he was appeasing everybody in the process. So that became the revolution at the time. And then Newton came along 100 years later, and he said, I have the scientific laws to be able to prove that everything Newton said, basically provide the underpinnings of understanding the nature of reality in the very large, the predictable world of Newtonian physics. Says that we can really predict where the planet's going to be in a certain amount of time, and we can shoot a rocket to the moon, and there's a whole idea, study the very large, an apple falls from the tree. We can figure out how fast it falls because it accelerates towards the earth at the same speed. And Newton was a genius, and he said, I'm standing on the shores, just on the shoreline of how big this really is. And this is what I can contribute. But he was a mystic in a lot of ways. And again, he didn't want to go against the convention of the time. So a couple hundred years later, Einstein shows up, and Einstein was a super cool guy because he spent a lot of time inward. And at 12 years old, he asked himself this simple question. If I ride my bicycle at the speed of light and I turn my lamp, if I turn my lamp on it, will my lamp go on? So he thought about that question every single day of his life. Every day of his life, he would go out on the boat on the lake as a child and lay on his back and look up at the sky and think about this. He was building models of understanding, working his best to be able to figure out how light and energy were related. He did it for 10 years. He was possessed by the concept. And finally, he was working as a third-rate clerk in a Swiss patent office, and he was watching this man fix the roof across the way, and he just paused for a moment, and he was watching, and the moment he was watching, he got this incredible vision, and he understood how light and energy were related. He was a very abstract vision, and it was so abstract and so dimensional that he had to go back to school to learn the mathematics to be able to explain what he saw. And his wife, his first wife, was an amazing scientist, and she helped him with a lot of his mathematics. So when Einstein began to figure it out, he nailed it down to one simple equation.